Almost everyone carries a small picture of nature somewhere in their life. It might be a photo on a phone screen, a memory of a walk, a feeling of calm when seeing trees or water. When asked, people say nature is beautiful. Nature is calming. Nature feels pure. Yet somehow, day after day, the systems we live inside continue to damage the very thing we say we love. This is not because people are secretly cruel or careless. It is because a quiet idea has settled into our thinking without being noticed. An idea so common that it feels normal. An idea that shapes decisions at work, in politics, in business, and even in personal choices. The idea is that progress and nature sit on opposite sides. That when one goes up, the other must go down. We rarely say this out loud, but we act as if it is true. We accept it as background noise. We see it when a new road is built. When forests shrink for short-term gain. When pollution is described as an unfortunate cost. This way of thinking feels practical, even realistic. But it hides something important. It hides how the world actually works. When you slow down and look closely at everyday life, you begin to notice that nothing around you exists without nature beneath it. The clothes you wear began as plants or minerals. The chair you sit on was grown or pulled from the ground. Even the invisible things, like digital services or online work, depend on buildings, energy, metals, and land. Nothing floats freely. Everything rests on physical foundations. This means the economy is not separate from nature. It lives inside it. Like a room inside a house. You can rearrange furniture, paint walls, and build shelves, but if you weaken the foundation, the whole structure becomes unstable. This is easy to forget because modern life feels distant from soil, water, and minerals. Food arrives wrapped and clean. Energy comes from a socket. Materials appear finished and smooth. Because we do not see the beginning, we imagine it does not matter. But it always matters. When extraction grows larger and faster, pressure builds quietly in the background. Rivers change. Soil thins. Ecosystems lose their balance. At first, nothing seems wrong. Life continues. Shops stay open. Jobs remain. But slowly, cracks appear. Costs rise. Supply becomes uncertain. Weather feels less predictable. People feel more anxious even if they cannot name why. This is what happens when we treat nature as an external thing rather than the system holding everything together. There is another hidden assumption buried even deeper. It is the belief that the way we produce things today is the only realistic way. That farming must exhaust soil. That mining must scar land. That repair is too slow or too expensive. These beliefs come from habits built long ago. Many of our core industrial methods were designed in a time when resources seemed endless and impacts felt distant. They worked well for speed, not for care. Over time, they became normal. Questioning them now can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. Yet when you look at how much material flows through the world each year, the scale becomes impossible to ignore. Every object, every service, every structure adds weight to the system. The more we pull without restoring, the more fragile the whole becomes. This is not a moral argument. It is a physical one. When inputs are damaged, outputs suffer. When soil loses life, crops struggle. When water systems are broken, cities face risk. When ecosystems collapse, economies lose stability. The pattern repeats across industries and regions. But patterns can change. When you reframe the relationship between economy and ecology, new possibilities appear. Instead of asking how much damage we can afford, a different question emerges. How can our tools reduce harm while also rebuilding what was lost? This shift is subtle but powerful. It changes the direction of effort. It opens space for creativity rather than sacrifice. In daily life, we already see small versions of this logic. Repairing an object instead of replacing it. Improving insulation instead of increasing energy use. Composting food waste to enrich soil. Each action respects the idea that systems work best when cycles close. At a larger scale, this same principle applies. Materials can be reused rather than endlessly extracted. Waste can become input. Farming can rebuild soil instead of draining it. Landscapes can be healed rather than abandoned. Technology plays a surprising role here. Not as a force that dominates nature, but as a tool that listens, measures, and assists. When machines help us see soil health more clearly, farmers make better choices. When recycling systems recover materials with precision, less pressure is placed on land. When restoration tools work at scale, damaged ecosystems recover faster than expected. These are not distant dreams. They are extensions of everyday logic applied with intention. Think of how many times in your own life you have learned that care saves effort in the long run. Ignoring a small problem often makes it bigger. Paying attention early reduces stress later. The same is true at planetary scale. When care becomes part of design, outcomes improve for everyone. This does not require perfection. It requires direction. It requires noticing that the story of economy versus nature is incomplete. It leaves out feedback, dependence, and long-term balance. When you recognize that every gain depends on healthy systems beneath it, choices shift naturally. Growth stops being about more at any cost. It becomes about better within limits. In daily routines, this perspective can feel quiet and practical. Choosing products built to last. Supporting systems that return value to land and water. Being curious about where things come from. None of these actions are dramatic. They are steady. Over time, steady actions reshape systems. The future does not arrive suddenly. It forms slowly through repeated choices made under shared beliefs. If the belief changes, the future follows. When we stop seeing ecology as an obstacle and start seeing it as the ground we stand on, the paradox begins to dissolve. We do not need to choose between prosperity and care. We need to understand how deeply they are linked. So the question becomes softer and more personal. If everything you depend on ultimately comes from living systems, how might your idea of progress gently begin to change?